evening, good afternoon, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome at this yet another episode of YouTube stream by OMDS or OM System with an ambassador. This time the ambassador is somebody you probably already know or you have already met at YouTube, and it is Petr Bambousek. Peter, welcome in the studio.
Thank you for the invitation, and hello to all watching us.
Peter, as you know, is one of our, or at least it seems to me, one of our greatest ambassadors. And he's actually one of the top ambassadors we have chosen. And Peter is traveling around the world, shooting wildlife, mostly birds, but also lizards and all sorts of tiny animals, sometimes even bigger ones. And today we will see one of his latest trips. And this trip was to Ecuador. Is that correct, Peter? Am I not?
Yes, absolutely correct. Yes.
Absolutely correct. Great. So last time we have heard, I think it was Pantanal. Your last trip was to Pantanal, as far as I remember. Or I mean, there have been so many of them. There have been so many, and we will definitely or I hope we will see your slide where you see all the presentations where you have traveled to within last maybe 6-7 years, or actually since 1996, because since 1996 this is the time when you switched from another brand to OMSYSTEM, in that time Olympus. And I think your first camera by Olympus was what was it, EM-1 Mark II.
Yeah,
right?
But you mentioned 1996, and it's definitely not the date I started photographing.
I mean 2016.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, sorry. I mean, I'm getting older, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry for that. I make more and more mistakes, or not me. It's my brain. My brain is forgetting things. I'm so sorry for that. But let's jump into what you have prepared for us today. Tell us something about your last trip, Peter. And please, just one more comment from my side. Sorry, sure. Before you go, Peter. And that is, do not hesitate to ask any questions to Peter. Please write them in the chat. I will definitely follow the chat all the time. And if there is some nice questions which need to be answered immediately, I will just drop them to Peter and ask him. And one more before you go. You see, I'm sorry. I mean, I almost let you talk, but I still have to show you something, guys. And that is Peter's webpage. As you know, the webpage is sulasula.com. You can see it on the top, which is a strange naming, but Peter can explain later on. Sulasula.com is Peter's webpage. And on this webpage, there is obviously the gallery and other things. So you can see many wonderful and amazing images from different expeditions, not just those which we will see today, but there is also this blog part. And in this blog section, there are very, let's say, interesting articles, not only about our equipment, but also about the feeling, how Peter feels when he's using the equipment. So it's not just a simple description. This is the equipment, this is the lens, and it gave me this image, but it gives very nice Peter's impression about how it feels for him, what actually it gives him as a benefit. And if there's something he doesn't like, he's not afraid to tell that. So he's maybe sometimes too honest. But yes, I mean, if there's something he doesn't like about the cameras, he will just say that. There's not that many things on the other hand. So this is Peter's webpage. And one more thing which I would like to stress out, and that is one amazing piece of work that Peter has done. I still think you are the only one in the world who has done this in English language, and that is the PDF.
Sure.
Sorry, yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm the only one or the only person on the planet, but I think it's maybe the first or maybe the only one dedicated for wildlife photography, my PDF material. So this is strictly focused on wildlife or nature photography.
Exactly. That's what I thought. So basically, your experience and your basically day-to-day work with the camera, originally with OM-1, now with OM-1 Mark II, is basically being switched into this almost 100, or is it, I think it's a 100-page PDF where you describe just about everything, how to use the camera for wildlife, so specifically for wildlife photography. Yeah. So if you're interested, I mean, this is the page, sulasula.com, where you would find it. But I mean, enough of me talking, Peter, and now it's all yours.
My turn. Okay. Thank you, Thomas, for introduction. This lecture or this speaking will be about my latest trip to Ecuador. I've been there many times. It was my 7th or 8th trip to Ecuador. I don't really remember. And it was the first time I have been there with a brand new camera, OM-1 Mark II. So it was my second trip with this camera. The first one was to Borneo last year. And this was the second trip to tropics with a brand new camera when I wished to confirm my previous setting. And this trip was focused mostly on birds. So I tried to tune up my personal settings for different situations. And I will explain later how I deal with different stories. At the beginning, just few words about me. I've been wildlife photographer for more than 20 years, and I'm not focusing just for birds or just for mammals or macro. I'm impressed by the diversity of nature, and I'm really like everything from ants to elephants and everything in between. So I really like insects, lizards, snakes, frogs, birds, anything, even the giant worm, which I exactly found in Ecuador during the last trip. So as Thomas mentioned, I'm photographing with OM system or Olympus gear since 2016. And starting that year, I travel a lot before, but I started travel again. And so far, I conducted over 30 trips because I returned somewhere. These are the most important trips I got with my OM system Olympus gear so far. And as you can see, my latest trips are Borneo, Ecuador, and with the next few weeks, I'm leaving to Pantanal. So I have a lot of experiences with this gear in field, in a real situation, most of the time in very tough situation, because in the tropics there are hard conditions in terms of light, in terms of weather and so on, a lot of rains and winds and so on. So trip to Ecuador begins as all my trips start. Usually I make a big hill of equipment I will use on the trip, and I try to squeeze it in a single bag. This bag is 22 kilograms, which is my record, I guess, because I usually have 23.9 kilograms, which is the limit for economy class in the airport. And I try also to squeeze my equipment. My current equipment is this. I have two bodies of OM-1 Mark II, which I usually use just one, and the second is backup body I use for wide angle while I photograph in telephoto as well, or it's just waiting if something happens with the main body. So I usually photograph on one body. The second is backup. I also have wide range of lenses. My main lens is 150-400, which is a miracle among the lenses, and I use it for, especially in a bird field, I use it for 99% of my pictures. But I also have a wide range of different lenses, 2 macro lenses, 90 and 60, and 3 wide-angle lenses for wide-angle macro or just simple landscape, and a very universal and very tiny 40-150 f4, which I use for more contextual pictures, something like a animal in its nature environment.
Peter, sorry, one question, one short question. Speaking about 4150 f4, which you are using now, I remember that you used to have 4150 2.8, which to me seems like better lens, not only because of the brightness, but also because you can use it with MC14 or MC20 teleconverter and many other things. Why have you switched this 2.8 to f4 4150?
It's everything about the size of my backpack and number of tools or gear I'm traveling with, because I would love to have 40 150, 2.8. I also love to have 12 to 100, but also I would love to have all the rest of the lenses I currently use. But it's impossible to travel with 20 lenses, which are incredible. So I try to decide which lens I will use most. These lenses are more or less the more wide aperture, like 4.8, 4.5 in a big wide one, and I decide to reduce the size and weight of the rest of my gear. So that's the reason why I use F4 version of 40-150. But for the pictures I take with this lens, it doesn't matter if it's 4 or 2.8, because I usually uprise the aperture to 5.6 or 7.1 something, because as I mentioned, I photograph the contextual pictures, where I don't need to have a shallow depth of field. It's usually something like a landscape, tele-landscape type of pictures. So that's the reason why I changed it in 8 years of photographing with OM system or Olympus. So I changed my gear a little bit to keep it in my backpack. That's the only reason, because I think all the lenses are perfect, especially in the pro line lenses. I love them all, but I'm unable to keep them all.
Right. Perfect. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Okay. And regarding to the gear, I also have a wide range of flashes. I use flashes time to time for special kind of pictures. I didn't use it much in Ecuador. I mostly photograph with a nature light. But yes, for macro or night macro, I use Godox system, and for birds, if I use it, I use Olympus FL 700. So here is my gear squeezed in a single bag. That's the reason why I have to keep the size and weight in a reasonable numbers. And this is the This is the weight of my latest gear on Ecuador trip, but it's about 10 kilograms, and 4 other kilograms includes iPad, all the batteries, all AAA batteries, and the others batteries for flashes and the other stuff. So that's the reason why it's 4 kilograms more than the gear itself. So it's about 10 kilograms together.
Still speaking about the gear, there are 2 short questions, so please short answers. Why did you give up the Panasonic 200-8? And second one, which wider angle lenses are in the bag? So if you could just tell us, it was 8-25, right? The wide angle?
Yeah, I have a short 1 year period where I was saving my money for 150-400, because after 150-400 was released, I didn't buy it by myself. I just borrow it a few times, but I wish to have my own, so I have to save my money first and buy the new gear. So that was the reason why I switched from 300 to 200 for 1 year, to change the angle of view from 300 and wait for a new lens in my gear. And after that, for a very short period, I have both lenses, 150-400 as well as Panasonic 200. They both are great, but I didn't use the Panasonic on a trip to Costa Rica at all, because 150-400 covers everything I wish to photograph, and I have to push myself to use it for some particular pictures. But after a while, I switch again to wide lens, because it's much more versatile in terms of zoom and the other proportion for macro photo, close-up photography. So I use it in one single trip, both of the lenses, but 99.8% I photograph with wide lens. So that I sold the Panasonic lens, and that was the reason. And the other question was regarding to the wide angle lenses. I have 825 is my prime wide angle lens. I also use Panasonic 9 and Laowa 7.2. 7.5, sorry, 7.5 aperture is 2. And I use these lenses for different reasons. I don't know if I have to dig deep in this topic because it's a little bit out of topic for today's lecture, because I didn't use it much on a trip to Ecuador. But make long story short, I use it mostly for wide angle, macro or close up, and each lens has different advantage for different size of subject. So sometimes I use 825 as a basic. If I need to get closer, I use 9 because it allows to get closer. And if I wish to play with a light at night, I use manual lava because it has manual setting of aperture, which allows me to use more advanced techniques for taking pictures. So this is in short.
Yeah, I think because as I know, there are quite a lot of amazing pictures ahead of us. I think we stop discussing the techniques now and go on.
Okay. So it was just a few comments about my gear and my backpack, because this was my first trip with my new backpack. I used a different backpack. I used what's the name, Shimoda, and now I'm using Peak Design. And this was the first trip with Peak Design, so I tried to play with a backpack on this trip for the first time. And after I pack everything, in a single bag for equipment, a single bag for the other stuff, we started travel. I tell we because it was trip with 4 more photographers I organized for. So just a few words about the Ecuador. Ecuador, based on its name, it's laying on the equatorial. It's a pure tropical country with 12 daily regime, 12 hours of night and 12 of daylight. There is also a place where you can photograph yourself that you were in Ecuador. This is the place where you can do it, and it's on the way from Quito to Mindo, which is the birdwatchers hub. So on the way from Quito to Mindo, you will pass through this place. Ecuador is very special in many different ways. Especially, it's split in 3 different zones. It's Amazon on the east. In the middle, there are Andes, and on the west part there is a coast. And there are a lot of different biotopes in between these zones, and there are different biotopes in the northern and southern part. As well as it's a very small country comparing to the other countries like Colombia, Brazil, and Venezuela. It's a very tiny country in this comparison. So it's much more easier to travel across all the biotopes and all the zones. So you can see a lot of different species from very short trip. There's also Galapagos archipelago, which is attached to Ecuador. So this is 4th zone of Ecuador, which is quite different, and it's a quite different story. If you ever travel to Galapagos, you maybe know it's something special in a global measurement. So it's quite a different story than the land part of Ecuador.
Yeah, I just want to remind you that you can actually all find the talk with Peter about Galapagos and use of OM-1 Mark II some way back in our YouTube channel.
Yeah, okay. So let's talk about the places I visited during my trips. These white spots marks my main places which I visited during all my trips. So it's not many places. So far I avoided Amazonia. I would like to go there, but I have to choose which exactly part I will have visit. And this part nearby the Guayaquil is now more danger than the Andes part. So I try to avoid this coastal area. And I also visited in the past the southern part, which is very special and very nice as well. But during this lecture, I will talk about the upper 5 points, which brings us from western, almost lowlands, up there to Andes to 4,000 meters, and down to eastern part of 1,000 meter above the sea level in eastern part. So this is incredible area or row you can go in Ecuador, and you will enjoy hundreds of species of birds. As I mentioned, we focus on the birds during this trip, more or less. So it's not surprising that we saw 210 species in 2 weeks. And it's not just about seeing the birds. It will be much easier with the binocular, but it's photographed birds. So we have opportunity to photograph over 200 species in a 2 weeks trip, which is incredibly crazy.
It is.
Speaking about the environment, this is how it looks like in Ecuador. In highlands, you can see that there are different elevation zones. So there are lowland forest, highland forest, and just stony part of the upper mountains. The most important, and for myself, the most impressive part are the cloud forest. It's something which you can find between 1,500 meters above the sea level to 3,000 meters, and somewhere between you will find the most beautiful rainforest, which is called cloud forest because there are a lot of clouds and moisture. Above 4,000 meters, there are just stones, and about 5,000 meters and up, there are snow cover of the mountains. This picture comes from Guayaquil, from my recent trip, where it was exactly how it looks like sometimes in Ecuador. It's a head-on-head sitting animals. So here you can see that there are so many animals that you are unable to see it side by side. They have to pile up. Some animals and some birds and some species are very important for me as a wildlife photographer. So I will explain later in this lecture where and how I took these pictures. But you can see these birds and all the stuff have amazing shapes, colors, different environments, and different opportunities you can have as a wildlife photographer in Ecuador. This is example how it looks in a cloud forest. There are a lot of mosses and a lot of rain, of course, a lot of clouds, and there are also a lot of orchids and bromeliads which cover everything all around, and it's a beautiful viewpoint from terrace of your lodge. It's very important for me as a photographer to choose the right lodge for photography. I try to choose some middle or upper range lodges because they are prepared for photographers. Very often they have some feeders for hummingbirds and the other birds. It also has some trail system, so you don't need to stay just by the lodge and photograph by the feeders, which is very nice, but sometimes it's boring. So if you choose the right lodge, you can go and walk on yourself into the jungle, and I love it very much.
Peter, sorry, I have a question for you. It's a question from Geoff, and he's basically asking about the weatherproofness and durability of the camera, because he says that somehow it probably happens to him that the OM gets stuck when subject to rain or zero temperatures or sub-zero temperatures. He thinks that it's an inherited fault. I mean, to me, OM system cameras, OM-5 and especially OM-1 series, are one of the most durable cameras as for the rain, as for the freeze-proofness and all these kind of things. So to me, Geoff, if this happens somehow to you, it's probably a fault of the particular piece. But I mean, Peter, you are shooting in this rainforest, so you probably have much more experience than I do with rain, with moisture, and so on. So can you tell us if you have experienced something like this in your life, photography life?
As I showed at the beginning of this lecture, I traveled over 30 times somewhere for the wildlife. Most time of these trips leads to the tropics. I use maybe all the cameras Olympus produced since 2016, and I only have 2 troubles. It means 30 trips. And the first one was by OM1 EM1 Mark II. there was a rubber on the holder of camera, and it goes out. I don't know how to explain it, but it's
Yeah,
rubbery.
it peeled off. It peeled off. I remember the case. Yeah.
That's the word. And the second was on the first generation of OM-1. It was a trip to Ecuador as well. On one of my two bodies, the dial wheel were stuck. It was very hard to roll it here and there, but they repair it in service in Portugal, and I never faced another issues. And I photographed in all, not in a freezy temperature, because I try to focus on tropics, so it's mostly above zero, but it is full of rain, full of moisture, the air moisture. I also showered my lens and camera on Galapagos because the scent and salty water, and nothing happens to the camera. So I really can confirm these cameras are very hard and sturdy, and they resistant against the weather, and the other stuff is the highest on the market. So I would say it's maybe particular issue.
Yeah, it's just this particular unit, I would say. Yeah, it
Yeah,
may
yeah,
happen,
yeah.
obviously. Yeah,
Exactly. Okay. So I usually travel in the tropics and photograph during day and night. Night photography is very special part of my trips. I love it very much. But on this trip, I try to avoid many night walks. The reason is very simple. We woke up at 4:30 or at 4 o'clock. And if you want to photograph at night, you have to go to bed after midnight. So it's impossible to make both together. So we choose to focus mostly on bird photography and wake up at 4 o'clock. Of course, there was opportunity to walk short walks around the lodges, so I use it as well. I also find beautiful stuff. This particular katydid, which looks like a leaf, is very special because I have maybe sort of 10 species from different places, from Costa Rica, Ecuador, Panama, and I have a nice collection of the species. And this one particular surprised me a lot, because for first time in my life, I have seen maybe the defense pose of this katydid, because when I try to get closer, it spread its wings and freeze it for 1 second and then make it back. So I was able to photograph this particular defense pose, which I saw for first time. So I was very happy to walk around the lodge. But this is it. This is just about the night photography. I will not tell more about it. Just maybe say that I'm photographing at night with a flash, with a diffuser. I have 3 different diffusers to different size of subjects, and it's all on manual mode on camera. So just a few words about this.
Right. You are describing the details of flash photography in basically one of the Zoom lectures, right? About the computational features. We have had this Zoom lecture, I think, a month ago, right? And we will definitely repeat it again, probably sometime in autumn.
Yeah, we touched the topic of flash photography, but it's very special kind of photography, which I really like, and I would like to make some video course on this topic, because there are a lot of different approaches for night photography, using flash for birds, macro, close-up, and so on. So in the near future, I hope I will finish it, and I will publish as well.
Yeah, well, there is still one question to the flash, sorry, and that is, what diffuser do you use for flash photography?
Oh, yeah, that's the question. I have 3 different diffusers. 2 are from Brandon from Australia. It's the name is Cygnustech or Sinustech. Maybe you will find it on Instagram. Brandon has a great sort of macro pictures, and I have tried maybe 4 or 5 different diffusers offered by different photographers. All have some advantages, but the Brandon's one is very simple to carry around. So it's very fast to attach the diffuser on your camera and detach as well as travel with maybe 2 or 3 sizes of diffuser. And I also have a different diffuser I made by myself, which is much bigger, and I use it for wide angle or off-camera flash or for photographing the snakes, which are bigger, and I have to use wide angle lens, especially 825, to get closer, but still have a huge diffusion size. So that's the reason why I use 3 different diffusers. And also, this is one of the reasons why I changed my backpack, because in my previous backpack, it doesn't fit all 3 diffusers, and I have to choose just 1 or 2, and now I can fit perfectly all 3. So that's one of the reasons.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I hope it's explained. I'm sorry. Just a few words about the lodges. These are the lodges. This is San Isidro Lodge, very beautiful lodge on the eastern part of Amazon. It's very comfortable, and it's very important for me to have some comfortable basement, because if I'm in the field, I can get wet, I can get muddy, I can get sweating. But if I have some nice basement with hot water and a nice environment, it makes me much more happy, and I can get away for any time to the rain. I don't care if I have some basement where I can return and it's nice and hot water. I'm happy one. Sometimes you will find your wildlife topics just on the doorstep, so it's good to look around. And it's really important to have some garden or nice forest area just around the lodge, because you can walk around and find the stuff like insects, crickets, frogs, lizards, and of course the birds, which are very close to your lodge, usually if they are using some feeders.
Mm-hmm.
This is my backpack in a forest. You can see the cloud forest is beautiful in terms of shades of green. It's very hard to reproduce this all shades of green in a post process. It's impossible to fit all the shades, so I like it very much. And I like just sit in a forest and look in the green. It's a very calming atmosphere. There's also not so bright side of the trips to tropics, and of course you are a very welcome part of the other species living there, like especially insects which like to taste you. And I forgot to take longer sleeves at night, and I was bitten 100 times by small tiny insects. So it was a little bit painful and itchy, and it keeps for 4 weeks. So after I return, I still have some bites out there. I also have some questions time to time. What did you eat on the trip? Because sometimes people expect that we travel with a local Indian kind of people and eating some caterpillars. No, in the nice lodges, you eat perfectly prepared food. And this is very important. If you have your food ready outside the lodge, you can still watch around, eat your beautiful lunch, and still look for birds. On the last trip, we were 5 persons together, and 3 of us have white lens. Somebody covered the lens, so you can see the same lens in a 3 different version. It's not different manufactured version. It's still all the 3 lenses are white, but there are some sticky covers on the market, so we use the stickers to make it more invisible in a jungle or in a field. Mm-hmm. This is advantage if you have some photography opportunities just around your lodge. This is Chocotucan Lodge in Ecuador. I highly recommend this place. They have a lot of feeders. You can see hanging bananas in front of us, and in a part of the garden there is a feeder where you can see toucans, tanagers, and the other stuff. Of course, if you are traveling to the tropics in Ecuador, you are facing incredible range of hummingbirds. It's hard to get. Any other country, maybe Colombia, can compete this place. But you can see maybe 14, 15, maybe 20 different species in a single feeder. And it's an incredible place where you can photograph interaction between hummingbirds. Of course, if you photograph the hummingbirds and wait for hummingbirds, not by the feeder, but on the flowers, it's incredible if you have 100 hummingbirds around, so you can wait for those who are feeding on flowers.
Mhm.
So if you ever will travel to Ecuador, you will see amazing range of shapes, colors, sizes, and everything around the hummingbirds. This is one of the most diverse country in the world in terms of hummingbirds in such a small size country. So it's one of the most important topic for most of photographers, of bird photographers. These are hummingbirds. What is a little bit tricky on hummingbirds, we all know that hummingbirds are colorful, but it's important to wait for a particular direction of flight. If you see this hummingbird, it's a wire-crested thorntail sitting on a stick. It's very beautiful because the shape of the hummingbird is beautiful. But if you want to see it in a full range of color, you have to wait until he turns its head and it shines out all the green, which is reflecting for other males, for other hummingbirds, and they are communicate via these colors. If you wish to see some different or more, let's say, important or endangered or rare kind of hummingbirds, you have to leave time to time your feeder area, because there are hummingbirds which are never visit the feeders, and you have to find them either with a guide or either by yourself somewhere out in the forest. Here you can see our small group photographing the hummingbird. I will just enlarge the place to make you. So this is stick with a hummingbird.
Mhm.
And it was the hummingbird I've seen for a second time in my life. It's a lancebill hummingbird, which is really long and very, very straight bill. And this is another place not far from the first one, actually. And we are looking for another important species, which I've seen for first time. And this species is focused just for this kind of flowers. These flowers are heliconias, and they are preferring heliconias with a special shape of flowers. And you can see it's a very different shape bill hummingbird. It's a sickle bill, and it was first time I've seen it at least this clear, because they are usually they are hidden somewhere. They are just calling, and they are very distinctive and hummingbird which is avoiding people. They are not much communicative like those living around the lodges, and they prefer to getting the nectar from heliconia flowers. This is a special kind of flower. They are growing nearby the rows. You can see them all the time, but it's very hard to find the one which is which hummingbird likes. And this hummingbird unfortunately prefer the older one, so it's very hard to get nice picture of this incredible hummingbird on the flower itself, because there are tens of the heliconias, and you hardly pretend where exactly it will suck the nectar. But I have one series of pictures where this shape of the bill makes the sense, because they place the bill deep in this part of the flower and get the nectar out of it. So I have at least two sort of pictures of this incredible hummingbird I've seen by myself for first time.
Mhm.
There's also another species of hummingbird which is not going on a feeders. You will never see it nearby your lodge, because it's a specialist living in elevation around 4,000 meters. And there are just few hummingbirds, very special ones, but this one is really beautiful. This is female of the hummingbirds. It's an Ecuadorian hill star. And to see the Ecuadorian hill star, we have to start very early. We wake up at 3:30 to get from Quito to 4,000 meters in Antisana National Park. And in the very beginning of the day, we started to walk just around 500 or 1 kilometer, 500 meters to 1 kilometer to see this very special flowers, which they prefer to feed. And after this is just about the waiting for particular hummingbird. These hummingbirds are not flying during the feeding. They just hold the flower and suck the nectar inside steady. The reason is there is not many oxygen, and I have to say by myself, I have strong headache in this elevation, so I have to be very careful in terms of movement, sitting down and rising up. It changed my mind for a while. So this is another hummingbird which I'm very happy to photograph. And also it's example how these hummingbirds are different in colors. If you wish to photograph them in full colors, you need a right angle of light and right angle of head. And if it fits together, you will see the hummingbird in quite a different colors if he looks in a side and in front of you, just facing your camera. So this is very important. Wait until the hummingbird change the shape of its head, and then the light is very important. And it gets few hours to get one nice picture of right angle of head and colors. So I'm really happy. The last time we visited the place, it works perfectly.
Mm-hmm. Peter, a few questions we have. Sorry, as we agreed at the beginning, I'm sorry, Henry, but we have agreed with Peter that sometime I will interrupt him with questions as they appear.
I will do it.
Because Henry was not very happy about me interrupting, but I have to because there are really few questions. One is from Sanders. Can you please list the lodges you stayed? Obviously, probably like the lodge you showed in the YouTube comments later on. Is that possible, or do you even want to?
To be honest, I don't share all my lodges I used. So it's part of my knowledge and my experience, and a very pet experience. So I can recommend San Isidro, Guango for highland species of hummingbirds, or in a Mindo area, I can recommend Chocotucan or any lodge around the Mindo, which are very nice. But I keep a little bit the particular name of lodges. Honestly, I traveled through maybe 15 lodges in these areas, and I try to keep the best for me and the people which are following me. So maybe this will help you at least just as a basement. But it's not hard to find the lodges if you go through some trip reports. You will find that there are lodges in the best places of Ecuador. I can also recommend ebird.com or org, I don't know, which is the basement of trip reports or bird reports of photographers or bird watchers, and you can see the hotspots in the area. So around the hotspot you can find some lodges, and you will not step outside. It's very easy to find some.
Yeah, okay, let's take it as part of your know-how. Another question, David, is there a better time of year to go to Ecuador? When do you recommend to go to Ecuador?
It's very hard to tell. I have been there in September, October, January, February, March, April, and that's it, maybe. And I don't know if we have some best time in a year, but we traveled there in September 21, and it was a little bit deserted in terms of birds coming to feeders. But I think the reason was different than that season. The reason was that it was just after the COVID period, and the lodges were empty. We were the only guests in the lodges, and the owners with a particular reason, didn't feed the birds for the whole year of not visiting, not visited by the photographers. So I think the birds just find the alternative places in the forest, because anytime something is blooming or fruiting in a forest, the birds are disappear from the lodges. They try to come back once it's empty in forest. They come more frequently to the lodges. But again, it's hard to pretend when exactly will something fruit in the forest or bloom in the forest, because sometimes it takes 5 years to the tree to bloom or fruit. So I have good experiences with all the time I visited Ecuador. There's always something to photograph. It's not about just season where there are a lot of hummingbirds or no hummingbirds at all. There are always many hummingbirds, and there are always something different. For example, in September, which I mentioned, it was a little bit low number of hummingbirds, but they were nesting toucans, and I have opportunity to photograph toucan feeding the babies. So it was October, and based on information from my friend, which was in the same place in August, it started in August and peak in October. So maybe September, October is great for photograph toucans on the nest. Sometimes it's better in terms of rain, but if you prefer to go there with no rain, there probably will be not many species around, so it's not so comfortable to photograph in rain, of course, but there are more species in the rain. It's very hard to say which particular part of year is the best. I've been there in September to April, and it always was worth to photograph. So I can recommend both. Maybe April or September are great. Right. I don't know if there is any empty, deserted time of year where nothing is there, because I think in Ecuador, especially, there's always something to photograph.
Yeah, perfect, Peter. Thanks. One short question. Here. Do you use tripods?
Yeah, why I'm thinking about, because I travel with tripod all the time. I use Peak Design tripod, very small one, very lightweight. And the reason is I usually, I don't know the percentage, but maybe 90% I photograph handheld. This was one of the reasons I switched to Olympus recently, because it has so strong stabilization that it doesn't push me to use the tripod, and it's lightweight comparing to huge lenses in a full frame I used before, that I can hold it for a whole day. Not in a ready position, but to walk around with a camera hanging on me. So I try to avoid the tripod with a simple reason, because the reason is with a tripod you are fixed in one particular angle of photography, and I try to avoid this limitation, because sometimes it's only if you only change the direction of photograph, you will get the different angle, which makes nicer background or nicer foreground or something, and take it lower or higher in a split of seconds. It's much more comfortable for me as well as for bird. So I try to avoid it, but sometimes I use it, especially if I photograph something I'm waiting for. Example was the feeding of the toucan, because you have just one fixed place where you photograph. It's a hole in a tree, and you have framed your picture. You are just waiting for toucan come in this particular place. So these are the situation I photograph from tripod. Sometimes if I find some nice flower where I'm waiting for a particular hummingbird to come, I also frame the picture from the tripod and wait just for hummingbird is coming. But usually I photograph more dynamic way, so I don't use the tripod often, but I always have tripods by me, because I never know what happens and what I will think about, so I always have my tripod ready.
Perfect, Peter. Thanks a lot. Before we go ahead, because then we will answer some other questions, I just want you to know this message from Natalia. Peter is a fantastic wildlife photographer and presents his knowledge with a lot of passion. Love it. Thank you so much, Natalia. And I think you are so right.
Okay. Thank you for the compliments. Thank you for your questions. Don't hesitate to ask me another questions because I have a lot to say. And whenever you will find something you want to ask, just do it.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
So this particular pictures, by the way, is the picture I photographed from the tripod because there was a flower which was in a fixed place, and I just wait for a particular hummingbird to come in. But this wasn't the reason I was waiting for by this flower. This was the reason, because in elevation around 3,000 meters in Ecuador, you can find very special hummingbird. It's a sword-billed hummingbird, and it's miracle among the birds because it's more or less it's a flying bill. The bill is so long, it's longer than the bird itself, and the bird is still hanging the bird in upper position. It's incredible to see this bird. We had fantastic opportunities on this trip. Finally I photographed this bird in a way I would like to. So it's a very distant background. The background is maybe 1 kilometer distant mountains, and I have a lot of pictures. I have hundreds of pictures maybe, because it was the great opportunity. I have seen swordbill in my previous trips, but the swordbill is living in the same area as Torrent duck. And Torrent duck is very special duck, which is living in wild creeks, and it's very nice kind of duck. And I always said, okay, hummingbirds will be here, but I will try to find the Torrent duck and try to walk around the creeks looking for the ducks. And usually it was finished by I had no picture of duck as well as no picture of swordbill hummingbird. And this trip I have both, so we will see it later. So this is one setting of the swordbill hummingbird, and as I mentioned, the background was created by distant mountains. But in a 3,000 meters, you are facing a lot of changes. There is rain, there is a clear sky, there is cloud coming through, and it changes all the time. So it's not about when it's bright in the morning, it's maybe just for half an hour, and then it's covered by cloud, then it's bright, then it's rain, then it's sun. It's incredible how it changed. And one of the changes are clouds which are coming through. So one of the cloud totally cover everything beyond the flower and hummingbird, and we already started to pack our gear because it didn't make a sense to make a photograph. But I was thinking a bit and say, okay, let's try something as a last part of the session. I pushed my exposure maybe to EV in a plus way in a foreground to make it much more bright. Use the cloud as a background, so there is no whiteboard, nothing. It's a cloud covering the valley. And I waited for the hummingbird as well. And it makes a little bit different way of photography. It's a high key kind of photography, but I like it a lot because it makes great part of the collection of swordbill hummingbird. So I recommend don't give up whenever you will find the conditions are changing. Sometimes it works if you just change your setting and you can photograph just for a while. After 10 minutes, the cloud cover even the flower. Hummingbird was invisible, and we finished the session at all. Speaking about higher elevation, there is another important area in Ecuador. It's in an area of mountain Antisana, where is this incredible valley as well as a huge waterfall. And this huge waterfall and the nearby cliff is a basement for one of the most beautiful bird of prey you can ever imagine. This is a closer view of the waterfall, and maybe you don't see it, but I will enlarge it. There is a cliff where Andean condors are resting. So in this part, there are huge condors resting and waiting for a time they open the wings and use the thermal to get upper. This is a closer view. They are usually during this time of the day in the early morning, they are going through the feathers and they clean them up. So they are sometimes they are almost invisible because they are still and just clean the feathers, and you look at them from a distance. So I have a little bit pictures of the cleaning feathers of the condors, and we were waiting for the final phase, which was they are going out of the cliff and circle around. It took around 1.5 hours of waiting and nothing happens. All the condors were there, no condors were flying. So we started to give up and say, oh, it doesn't make sense. And after this decision, they started to fly away. So I hold my camera and focus on especially on the waterfall area, because I like the contrast between dark waterfall stones and condor as well. And the other position we wish to photograph is eye level flying condor, and it also happens. So from this session, I have some environmental picture, some close-up flying condors and crossing the waterfall. So I'm very happy to be there. Even it took more time than we expected at the first moment. And this is from the same area, and I must to get credit to our driver, because we drive away. We were after the Hill Star session and the Condor session, and we just drive away, and the driver stops and show us bear, Andean bear. Which this is, I will try to control. It's with the wide lens. It's 1000. This is 500 millimeters, so it's 1000 millimeter counted. So still with a 1000 millimeter focal length, it's just a dot in the middle of picture, and I have no reason to place it somewhere in a golden cross in terms of composition, because it doesn't make sense. But this is Andean bear in the middle of his favorite bromeliads, which he is feeding on. So I was happy that we've seen this rare animal, even we didn't expect it. There are much better places in Ecuador to see these birds, but it's perfect to see them on the way. Well, there will be another topic, so I don't know if we have some questions. Now I will.
Many questions, actually. So let me just see. One question which I think you will like. Peter, are you planning to issue your custom settings for the OM-1 Mark II?
Yeah. If you visit my websites, Thomas shows you my homepage, and there is a link to PDF where I describe all my settings of camera, which I use, and I double confirm this setting on my trips to Borneo as well as Ecuador. And there are also set files which you can directly download to your camera. And these set files and the settings reflects what is described very deeply in a PDF. So this is your way. If you want to use my setting of camera, there is everything covered in a PDF and set files to download. Yeah.
And I have to confirm that when we do workshops, for example, here in Czech, together with Peter, then many actually people that enter the workshop, they actually already have Peter's setups downloaded into their cameras, so you can freely use them once you download this PDF, as well as you can change them anytime you want to. Another question, and that is, do you use manual settings for birds, auto ISO? Do you also use CAF with tracking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I try to avoid tracking at all, but maybe now it's not the reason as before. I explained it. In the previous cameras, and I mean all the EM1 series as well as OM1, the older one, the first one, OM1, it was possible to use tracking as well as bird detection in OM-1 together. And from my experiences, it didn't work well. It fight both systems of tracking and bird detection fight to each other, and it was sometimes impossible to keep the focusing point on the bird. So I always preferred either bird detection and CAF, or if you don't want bird detection, turn off bird detection and try tracking. But I still think the CAF itself works better. Now it's a little bit different story on OM-1 Mark II, because you are not allowed to use it together. So if you set bird detection on OM-1 Mark II, you are not allowed to use tracking from reason I described before. So even if I used bird detection, I don't use tracking because it's not allowed, and I understand it and I welcome it that it's not fighting to each other. And I tried new CAF and tracking itself with no detection, and I found it much more useful than I was experienced before. But I don't use it much. I prefer the simple CAF and or bird detection.
Yeah, as we discussed in some other stream, basically CAF plus tracking is kind of older version of the AI intelligent subject detection, which is much more precise, much faster, and works simply better. So basically, that's the reason why with OM-1 Mark II, you cannot even turn on CAF tracking together with subject detection, as Peter just said. Another question: do you use focus stacking in your macro photography?
Time to time. I would love to focus more to focus stacking, because macro is all around. You don't need to travel across the world to see some macro suitable for stacking. So I'm playing with this. I try to learn different ways, because you can photograph the focus stacking from internal feature, which is great, but you can also photograph focus stacking handheld, where you are a little bit shaking and so on, and you have to stuck it in a computer. So yes, I use the technique, but not so much. Most of my pictures are single shots, or most of are single shots.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. There are a few more, but let's answer just one and return to the other ones later on, so that you can actually show us more images. And that is, are you using Pro Capture with most of the Hummingbird photos?
I don't use Pro Capture for Hummingbird photos, because in terms of hummingbirds, you have many information available in terms of time when the hummingbirds arrive. So it's hard to miss hummingbird in a flower itself. So if you frame your picture from your tripod, you are ready with your camera, either holding some remote control, and you watch your flower. You probably notice the hummingbird is there. There are just few kind of hummingbirds, usually the tiny ones, which are not hanging along on the flower. Sometimes they are just touch the flowers, because they are, especially on a verbena, it's a very tiny flower with just two flowers on the side. So you see just the hummingbird will make a dot and disappear. For this kind of hummingbirds, I would use Pro Capture if I find myself unable to catch it. But as they repeat the visit, so you have a lot of opportunities to make it all over. So basically, for hummingbird photography, I don't use it, because most of the hummingbirds stay by the flower more than 1 second, and it's enough to make a lot of pictures, maybe without the first touch of the flower, but it's not important. But if I will have any vision that I would like to photograph hummingbird approaching the flower, then I would use the Pro Capture, because the approaching is very quick, but they stay by the flower for 1-2 seconds, and it's enough for normal photography.
Yeah, but then I suppose you use some kind of sequential shooting, which is basically the second part of the question. Please let us know your settings for shooting hummingbirds.
I will share the setting at the end of this lecture. So if you wait at the end, so
Yeah.
you will see my basic and most used setting. I use even for hummingbirds or either other birds. I use it all the time. So yeah, I will mention.
Perfect, Peter. Thanks a lot, and show us some more.
Okay, let's go to very special birds, which are Antpittas and hidden birds, because there are a lot of places where you can photograph some special birds which you are hearing during your walk through the rainforest, but it's impossible to photograph them. And one of them are pittas or Antpittas. I don't have a wide range of Antpittas. I just would like to share my experience, how it works sometimes, and how tricky can be the photography of Antpittas, even they are attracted by worms. So this is in one place where we were asked if we would like to photograph Antpitta, yellow-breasted Antpitta. We said yes, of course. If it's possible, it will be nice attachment to our collection. So we were there, and a lady was preparing something here, and this is the position where we try to photograph the pitta. But we expected it will happen somewhere there. So we all of us focused on this place and waited the pitta will jump on the mossy kind of stick or something. But the lady a little bit surprised us with two things. She moved the worms on the edge of the path, so it was invisible for most of us. Only one or two person can see the pitta from that angle. And the second part was that the lady didn't leave the area. She actually just sit at the edge of the area with a white trousers and wait until the pitta come. So from beginning, where we were happy that we have some nice view on a mossy stick, it was a little bit a nightmare because the pitta came at this corner of the path, and the guys sitting here were in an impossible photography impossible composition. So that's one of the reasons why I don't use tripod, because if you use tripod, you are fixed in a particular place and you are unable to move around to photograph from different angle. As well as I didn't use a seat which was prepared for us, because again, if you sit on a seat and you have tripod, you are fixed from this position, and if you sit on a wrong way, you are unable to move, because if you move from the seater, you maybe rush the bird. So yeah, after two tries, pitta finally came. It's not a colorful bird. It's not a bird you will be, oh my god, impressed by color or shape or something, but they are weird and they are so hard to be seen in a nature environment that without any feeding or trying to attract the pitta, it's impossible to see it. Even if you hear it from some ground level, maybe 5 meters from you, and you are staring in the jungle, you are not seeing it. And its song is very pitchy. It's very easy to hear, but it's very hard to photograph them. So this is one of the picture I took during this session. So yellow-breasted pitta is on my list, and we have few more opportunities, better or worse, with the other species of Antpittas. There are some people which are focusing just for Antpittas, and they are visiting special places, and they have collection of Antpittas. It's a nice hobby, but it's very time-consuming. But the pitta collection is finally beautiful. So these are the birds which you can see in Ecuador. By the way, there's almost 2,000 species of birds, so we have a lot of bird species to photograph and focus on if you wish. There's a one very special bird in Ecuador and in Colombia as well, which is very hard to photograph. The reason is these birds are coming on a courtship place which is named as a lek. The bird is cock of the rock, the name of the bird, and it's a huge 35 centimeters big male which is coming in this place every morning before the sunrise. So it's very hard to get a picture because these birds are trying to. This is your view. By the way, here in the middle is one of your cock of the rock. There is another one, and there is a third one. So you have huge mass of leaves and trees and sticks, and in between there are beautiful colored birds, which looks like this. It's a very unusual shaped bird. They belongs to Cotinga, and all Cotingas are weird birds. Whenever the scientists know how to classify the bird, they are Cotingas. So Cotingas are very weird in different colors and shape, and this is one of the most important in terms of photography because they are so beautiful, but it's hard to photograph in a clear background. And they have bright red colors, which are confusing most of autofocus systems. There were a few people with Canon, with Sony, with Olympus or OM system, and we all have troubles to photograph these birds, especially if they are moving or they are changing the shape. They are for the AI detection. AI doesn't understand this is the bird because it has weird shape. And best practices to focus, from my experience, is focus somewhere on this cross of red and black part. If you try to focus on a red part of the bird, it's probably not get in focus. But if you focus somewhere on the cross of black and red or white, black and red, so most of time you will have success focus, and there the plane of focus is the same as eye, so we have sharp pictures. So they are shaking, they are open wings, they are croaking, everything. It's a beautiful session in the morning, but sometimes it's very hard to get a clean view. So I try to focus through the leaves to avoid the mass of the leaves around on sticks, and sometimes it happens that it works. So I don't know, maybe a few hundred pictures from the morning, but just few are usable. What is important in Ecuador, there are two versions of this bird, cock of the rock. More red one is on the western part, and more orange one and a little bit smaller headed is on the eastern part. And sometimes you are able to photograph both if you are in a right place, in a right moment. So this is how it was. I photographed hundreds of pictures. Because you have low light, you have to push up your ISO. I don't know which ISO was this, but I can control it. It's ISO 10,000. This particular bird is ISO 10,000, and it's post-processed with some denoiser. So again, with 10,000, it's very it's okay. If you see your pictures on your camera with 10,000, it's horrible because it's full of grain. But if you run these pictures through DxO Bureau or some similar program, Lightroom denoise or something, you will be surprised how many information in the picture is. So don't care about the ISO, just focus to have sharp pictures, and you can process it very well after.
Peter, sorry, one question. If you could go back to the nice red bird. Dan is asking the same question I asked you a couple of weeks ago when I saw it. The picture doesn't show the beak. How come? Where is the beak?
Yeah, beak is hidden. I can show you the beak. Here is a picture of eastern version, and it sits against the light. So if I enlarge it, you can see there is a beak. There are the feathers making the shape on the head. So this is how it looks in a little backlight. But it's very hard to get backlight of Western type because they are usually moving in the morning before the sunrise. At 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, they disappear and they are silent. So it's very hard to get some natural light, especially backlight, to Western morph of Cock of the Rock. So here is an opportunity to see it. By the way, this is 5000 ISO.
Yeah, still quite high, but I mean the artificial intelligence really pulls off basically all the noise, right?
Very well. And here's an example how does look the beautiful cloud forest, but sometimes it happens that you are walking in the best place in Ecuador to see some particular species, and you will photograph nothing. That happens, it's normal. And I just want to share part of our trip. There was a mudslide few days before we reached the place. So we have to follow this very narrow trail. And below us, there was a huge gap and nothing out there. So I was really scary. I have to confirm that this is a very uncomfortable way of moving in a cloud and rain and so on. And after this trip, we only have everything wet, but no picture from this day walk. So this happened, and this is the reason why I like mid-range or upper-range lodges as a basement, because they stay in a nature. You can get wet as you wish, but after you can make your coffee, sit by the lodge and enjoy the feeders of hummingbirds. So this is the setting of my favorite lodge in Ecuador, where you can enjoy your coffee as well as birds, as well as the other stuff to photograph. There are not just hummingbirds in Ecuador. Of course, there are a lot of different shape and sized birds. This is an example of troop of toucans. These are chocotoucans, arasaris. And this is feeder for tanagers. Tanagers are very special birds in terms of colors. They move around the forest in so-called mixed flocks, and you can see every color you can imagine in a tanager family. So here you can see how it looks like in a feeder when this mixed flock come for prepared banana. And by the way, this is one of the best system of feeder I found during my trips, because usually people place the bananas below and the branch above the feeder. So a lot of birds just arrive directly on the banana. But here place the banana in a part of the bark. So the other birds, instead of the first one, have to wait until the first get some food. And this waiting time is perfect for photography. As well, it's on this left side, but there's no background. So this was the best feeder if you want to photograph tanagers. I highly recommend to use this kind of feeders. So here you can see what happens on the feeder. You can focus on any color you wish. For example, for this bird, it's perfectly situated. You can wait until this one is fed it, and it's perfect. It's perfect way how to photograph tanagers. Tanagers has dozens of colors and shapes and so on. So you can photograph really nice pictures with blurry background, because they approach the feeder and they are not scary about people. So you can get a huge collection of tanagers, especially if you travel across the Ecuador. Maybe, let's say, in 3 or 4 places, you will have 30 different colors of tanagers, different elevation, different valley. So it's impressive how beautiful the tanagers in Ecuador are.
Amazing.
So this is just an example. I don't know how many species of tanagers I do have, but they have beautiful colors, and it's one of very favorite topic in Ecuador. Very easy to photograph, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, nice. Thomas, do we have any questions? I will.
Yeah, sure. Let me just go back slightly. One question from Luis. If you think, as we are discussing the tripod, if you use it or not, And the question is, do you think a monopod would be more useful in nature photography, in wildlife photography?
From my part, not. Monopod is very useful if you are not able to hold your camera for a longer time. It helps you to push the camera on monopod, but the tripod is more, from my experience, it's more versatile than monopod, because I would like to have some hydraulic monopod, or I don't know how to call it. If you push the monopod down, it will allow you to get lower. If you let the monopod pressure it rise up, it would be great because you can change your position. But if you have your camera on your monopod, you are again fixed in a single level of angle of view, and I don't like it because it's not so versatile. But I've met many photographers using the monopod as a base equipment, taking around. So for some photographers, it's good. I don't like it. And if I want to have something fixed, so I don't use my camera handheld, I prefer a fixed place like a tripod, because I can avoid to touch the camera. So I don't use a monopod a lot. I never use it, by the way. Even I have one tripod with a detachable leg, which can be used as a monopod, but I never use it because it's not so flexible as I wish. But yes, for some people, it can be a solution, of course. So there is no, how to say, in a photography, there is no good or bad way. The bad or good way is recognizable by results. So if you are able to get nice results with monopod, the monopod is great choice. I'm not able to make it. For me, it's not a good choice. But don't follow recommendation in style. This is what we photographers use, and don't use this one. This is not what you have to follow, because you have to follow yourself. If you feel you need tripod more often, use it. Use it for your comfort, for your stability, and for maybe more sharp pictures. If you are happy to walk around without, use it. Just focus on results, not on technique.
Yeah, absolutely. One question which might be a little bit longer, but okay. I have used Olympus since EM1. I now use OM-1 Mark II and 15400 for birds flying, and I have gotten poor results compared to my Canon R6 Mark II with 100 to 500. Any thoughts on why? Typical.
Yeah, very, very often. It's very hard to. There's so wide topic that it's very hard to recommend any solution if it's. Well, I just checked the. Yeah, what's poor results? What does it mean? It's not sharp. Is it not focused? Is it I don't know what? So basically, for bird photography, I use 3 steps. I use, the first step is bird detection and CAF. There also you have to set CAF. What's the name? CAF sensitivity. Yeah, that's the word. You can set +2 to -2 and everything in between. So this is second important setting. You can use AF limiter, which you can use to limit the depth where focus will work. So sometimes, for example, if you photograph hummingbirds or tanagers I mentioned before, it's not necessary to focus everywhere from 1.5 meter to infinity. So you can reduce the distance to particle distance from 5 to 8 meters, and the AF will be work much more quickly. Again, it's just a question. You have to, if you photograph the real flying pictures, which means from the left to right or right to left, don't forget to change your stabilization to IS2, because if you have IS1, it's try to stabilize your movements side to side. So it's very hard to say where exactly can be the problem. I photograph lots of birds in flight pictures, even with older versions of the cameras, and I don't feel any particular issue with this. And of course, there are maybe on the market some better cameras. Of course, this autofocus systems are getting better every year, so we can see every new camera bring something new in terms of focusing system. But from my experiences, I have hundreds of sharp bird flying pictures. But it all depends on your setting, your experiences, and maybe 6D Mark II is better. I don't know, or R6 Mark II is better. I really don't know. I have no personal comparison, but I have a lot of sharp bird of flights pictures with these settings. I don't know, Thomas, maybe you are muted.
Oh, sorry. I just pressed a different button. I was just about to say that OM-1 Mark II has made a great improvement as for the bird detection. And we do a lot of workshops also with different other ambassadors where we definitely shoot birds or eagles in flight most of the time. And basically, the thing is that, as you described, many people come and say, well, I don't have that many sharp pictures. And the result at the end of the day, they find out how to set up the camera precisely, as you just described. You just need to set up a couple of things. And second thing is experience. When I was there ages ago with a professional ambassador who was shooting birds and flights for years and years, and it was my first time, like maybe 6-7 years ago, I had 1 out of 10 pictures sharp, and he had 9 out of 10 sharp. And we were having the same settings, the same camera, same lenses, shooting the same bird. And basically, this was the experience. But now today, with OM-1 Mark II, which does almost everything for you as for the focusing of animals in movement, in motion, then I cannot say either, as you said. I don't know how Canon R6 Mark II focuses, but OM-1 Mark II is for birds in flight or animals in movement. It's so good. So maybe if you have some ambassadors around and they do some workshops, or even private tutorials, please try to get in touch with them, maybe after a couple of hours or half a day with them. They can advise you directly on spot and help you right there. Good. Okay, Peter, go ahead with your images, please.
Yeah. So there are a lot of images in front of us, but I will run a little bit faster through them, because if you are around the bird feeders, sometimes the bananas attract nice animals which are unexpected, like this tyra, or different birds from teenagers, like barbets, which are very colorful. This is a very special bird. It's a toucan barbet, which is endemic of Ecuador and southern part of Colombia, in very special part named Choco. There's also highland toucans as well as lowland toucans. These are arasaris, which are, by the way, coming on a natural growing bananas, like in this case. So I found arasaris coming on natural growing bananas as well as on feeders. So you have a lot of opportunities if you stay around these nice lodges and you look around. You can find beautiful birds to photograph. Here are 2 arasaris on the left part. There is an adult one. On the right part is a younger one. So it's it was March. So as I described before, I photographed toucans feeding babies in September, October, and now here you can see these are younger ones in March. So sometimes they feed babies later, maybe in January. They finish to feed the birds in a nest and they feed them in a feeders later. So it's very hard to decide which exactly is the best time to go to Ecuador, but March, April is perfect as well. The feeders allows you as well to photograph birds from close up. So sometimes I just zoom to maximum to get some nice portrait. If you play with nature light, with direct light, you can get some dark background. Like in this case, it was nature dark background. You can look around the lodge and you will see maybe this choco toucan sitting in a perfect place for photography. This is no arrangement. This is natural nature growing tree. So yes, it's very important for me as a photographer to stay in a lodge which has some huge garden which you can go through and see beautiful birds. Beside the banana feeders, there are places with a lot of moth and butterflies. So in Ecuador, if you wish to focus to butterflies, you have plenty of opportunities to photograph. It's amazing range of butterflies you can photograph in Ecuador. They are camouflage, colorful wings that are you can look through the wings, and it's amazing array of butterflies. So I recommend to look around the butterflies as well, and especially sometimes they lighten the white board or white piece of something at the night, and it tracks the moth from the forest, especially after the moon is going smaller, because if there is a full moon or around, the moths are not attracted to this arranged places. But if the moon is gone, so you will see impressive number of moths, especially in a higher elevation. So I photographed some array of moth with a meter, and here you can see how it looks like at night on this place. It's amazing. It's something I'm not facing in my country anytime. It's incredible.
Wow. It's entomologist's dream, right?
Yeah, it is. Exactly, it is. And this is fantastic to see the diversity of the forest. Every night there come hundreds of moths, and this is also the places where are prepared some branches, and early morning birds are coming to catch the moths. So before the sunrise, you can photograph very special birds which are focusing on ground dwelling in the forest and eating the moth and grasshoppers and so on. Belonged them, there are a few birds which are very special. These are end birds. And this end bird was photographed so early in the morning that I didn't recognize by my naked eye what exactly is the bird, because it was so dark that I have to push my ISO high and photograph and look over the picture what exactly species is this end bird. And by the way, this is 800 ISO, but I think it's don't know, there are some weird. Oh, this is not the this is not for this picture, because I think it's a 8000 ISO in this particular picture. This picture, it was 1600, but it's 8000 ISO. Sorry. So I will focus a bit to show you 8000 ISO photograph in the dark. Again, this was impossible to recognize the bird. So it was so dark. So these end birds are very special. They are invisible, almost invisible during the day. And I photographed them in very high ISO just to recognize which particular species it was. And this is 1600 ISO.
1600 or 16,000?
I'm sorry. So of course, 16,000 ISO.
Yeah.
So I just photographed them to and process. Of course, again, I process these pictures in a DxO Pure RAW 4, and it cleans up the picture, so I can use it for different reasons, like these lectures and so on. So my lecture is, don't afraid of high ISO. Use it in advance in 16,000, maybe 20,000. If the picture is sharp, There are a lot of information for post-processing the pictures in a modern software, so you can get nice, clean pictures of rare birds, which is much more better way than avoid high ISO, have longer exposure time, and blurred pictures. So it's impossible to work with blurred pictures. So prefer to have more noisy but sharp pictures. You can work with them incredibly in post-process. There are another early morning birds which are coming for the moths, which are either naturally attracted or they are attracted by lamps, or they are attracted by the lamp I showed you before. So this is pictures that you can take just around your lodge. So watch carefully early morning. Anywhere is any lamp, it's maybe a road lamp or something. Every morning the birds are coming to get some moth and caterpillars and grasshoppers and so on. So it's great array of birds. You can get very early morning. Usually, since the first light of sun is catching the place, you can get the best pictures. After that, it's very hard because all the moths and all the insects warm up and disappear very soon. So here are just examples of birds catching the moth and the insects. They are different birds than attracted by bananas. These birds will never come to banana. These are insectivorous. We also find tiny baby. We didn't know what exactly bird species it was, but later we noticed it's some thrush coming to the feeder and fed this baby, so we recognize it later. We also photographed trogons very close distance. It's very hard to get clean picture of trogon sometimes. So after this trip, I have great close-ups of trogon, great setups in a forest. So I'm really happy with the trogon pictures from this trip. And again, there are birds which are not coming to feeders. You have to just look around carefully, like woodpeckers and these beautiful parrots, which are nesting in the same tree, and they were funny looking, both each looking to each way. So I photographed this a bit closer to make a really nice, funny picture. This was just about the birds. The trip was mostly focused on birds, but here you can see example of biodiversity of insects in Ecuador. If I would be there just with macro lens, I would never stop to photograph. This is a single leaf on the way around the lodge, and it was covered by beetles. There is another example of beautiful beetle we met during this trip. It was a huge one. So you can see how we disappear from us.
Nice.
So there are a lot of opportunities to photograph beetles which are attracted naturally in a lodge. So here I tried to photograph one in comparison of my hand size, but it was impossible because he never stops. Yes, and my friend was laughing all the time. So
do you ever plan to go to tropics somewhere just to shoot macro, just to shoot insects?
Yes, I do it. I do it often in Borneo. Borneo is an impressive place for insect photography and small stuff like frogs, lizards, and snakes. And I've been there a few times just for macro, for night walks especially. Sometimes I spent in Borneo 1 week just at night. I didn't know what happens during the daytime, and I slept, and I just went out from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. and I totally turn off my daily routine. So now this is still sorry.
Okay, no, I was just saying, okay, thanks.
This is the last topic of this lecture. So finally, we are at the end. I noticed somewhere in a topic of hummingbirds that sometimes I change opportunity to photograph swordbill hummingbird to photograph Torrent ducks. And on this trip, after I photograph nice pictures of swordbill hummingbird, I was happy that I have opportunity to photograph Torrent duck on one stream, so I can share the pictures of the Torrent ducks. at the first moment, it was important to go there. So it was a trail for about 3 or 4 kilometers through the forest, and it's very advisable to use rubber boots in the forest because you never know where it's muddy, where it's dry out. So I usually use in the forest rubber boots. It's my basic equipment in tropics. And after I passed few of these muddy places, I finally reached the edge of the river. So I just photographed my equipment and surrounding by my mobile phone because I have no reason to photograph it in a better way. Just for you to imagine how does it look like if you walk through the forest out of the lodge. And this happened to me unexpectedly because I heard that on the creek below, on the end of this trail, it's sometimes opportunity to photograph the Torrent Ducks. And before I reached the bank, I noticed 2 Torrent Ducks on the huge stone in the middle of the creek. So I stopped in the forest, at the edge of the forest. So the Torrent Ducks didn't know about me, but I photographed them through the leaves and through the forest in the water. And it was weird, by the way, for me because usually there are males trying to attract the females, but I noticed 2 females trying to attract the male. Here is the video I took from my place where they were jumping and making weird shapes. And after a while, the male of Torrent Duck arrived, and they try to attract him for mating, or because this dancing is typical for the male, not for the female. So I tried to make some video of this behavior, but of course it's a running water and almost still ducks. So I tried to make picture with a blurred water and sharp ducks. I used for this particular picture ND filter, which I like so much, and I use it all the time if I have opportunity for having something like this, the still part as well as dynamic part of image. So this behavior, which I never noticed, I never seen 3 Torrent Ducks in a single stone. So after a while, I took maybe 50 or 60 pictures with slow shutter speed, and it was very hard to get all 3 ducks motionless, because always at least one was shaping or making some behavior, and it was very hard to get them together still with the running water around. But I have 2 pictures I really happy for because I use internal ND filter in a new pronged way 128 power, and it allows me to photograph this scene in very low shutter speed. So it was perfect for my collection from Ecuador. And here you can see how happy I was right in the forest. But my happiness was very short, because after I photograph the ducks, I approach the bank of the river, and I try to look around if something special is there. The Torrent Ducks already disappeared, so I didn't photograph them anymore. And I decided to photograph my equipment nearby the river. So I took my mobile phone and took the picture of my equipment at the edge of river, beautiful river in Ecuador. But I try to I try to go back a little bit. So maybe you know it from Darwin award of the most stupid death. So I almost follow this awareness, because I try to go step back and even more, and I stop myself by this stone. And after I catch the stone, I have incredible fall down on the ground, and I felt on my left hand. So I damaged my left hand by this fall, and this is the result. After I returned from Ecuador, I have to visit a doctor, and it's almost 2 months after I returned from Ecuador, and it's still not fixed. So my left hand is a little bit disabled in terms of shaping the thumb and turning my hand. So this was the final part of my Ecuador trip, which was so productive. And these are just few pictures I took during my trips to Ecuador. I didn't show you all the pictures because it would be even longer than now, almost 2 hours lecture. But the only final part of this lecture is my most preferred setting I use for maybe 90% of pictures. So during this trip, I used M mode, full manual mode on my camera. So I set fixed aperture, fixed exposure time, and I also use auto ISO. If you use just these three settings, it's sometimes hard to get some special exposure experiments. For example, Swartberg Hummingbird in a white background, you have to push exposure +2. And it's impossible if you use your manual mode and auto ISO, because auto ISO always corrects the right exposure. So I also set a button which allows me in this combination make exposure lower, -2, or +2 for a high key. So I have this quadruple settings. It's a aperture, shutter speed, auto ISO, and also correction, which helps to auto ISO make corrections which I really wish. So these 4 settings are perfect for me. It took me a while to learn it because before I used aperture priority for my pictures, but this is much more flexible. If you, for example, if you photograph in the rain and you wish on one picture rain as a dots, so you need to use maybe 3,000 of seconds aperture shutter speed, and then you decide to have rain as a trails, so you have to quickly change your shutter speed to 1/30 of second, and it's very hard to get in A mode, so you have to switch to A or S and switch in between. But in this combination, you can get everything in a single setting and don't need to change your setting much. Regarding to sequential shooting setting, I prefer to use SH2, which is on OM-1 as well as OM-1 Mark II, and it allows me to continual focus on the animal and use really high sequential shooting without the blackout. So it's blackout free mode, and on my new OM-1 Mark II, I can slow down the settings to 16.7 frames per second, which is my preferred settings. It's perfect for most of the pictures. If I feel I need higher sequential, for example, the hummingbirds we mentioned before, I use 25 or 50 frames per second in SH2. Of course, sometimes I'm using higher in SH1, but it doesn't focus continuously, so I use it for pro capture mode or this kind of shooting. Regarding to focusing, I have set as a default bird detection active, and my personal setting of AF point, which I named C2, and this is 15 to 11 points. So it's something like quarter of size of image is covered by this AF point, and bird detection try to find the bird anywhere around inside or around the square. If I feel it's not precise, I have two another settings. It's a small AF. This is very small. It's 3 to 3 dots, 9 dots together, or the precise one, which is single AF, and I set by myself C4, which is neighbor of single AF, and the only difference is the single AF is moving every 3 steps, every 3 dots, and I define myself the single one, which is moving more precisely every step is there. So I move the small tiny single AF. If I need more precise, I just change it to C4, which is the same, but move more precisely. And also I have set a limiter, AF limiter, which allows me to shrink the area where focus is working, and it helps me to photograph birds in flight and so on. And of course, I try to experiment, so I love to have my ND or GND filter, and I mean internal features available. So I have button assigned to ND or GND, and I use it based on the situation. I showed you before on Torrent Ducks how I use the ND filter. This is example how I use graduated ND filter, which is new to OM-1 Mark II. This is a scene I photographed in a very early morning. There was first beams of light touching the forest, but in the foreground there was a white cloud, and after the sunshine hit the cloud, it was overshining. So I used the internal graduated ND filter, use it on a lower level, not from up but from bottom of the picture, and after that I photographed my very favorite early morning rainforest picture. So these are the settings I use most of the time. Of course, I tweak the settings based on the situation. And as I mentioned before at the beginning, I created 100 pages PDF where I describe all my settings. And I have to confirm that during the trip to Ecuador, all the settings are fine. They are fine-tuned enough to photograph all the kind photograph I try to photograph on this trip. So this was the Ecuador 2024, and this is the end.
Peter, thank you so much. But there are a few more questions, if I may still.
I don't hear you. I'm not sure if you're close to microphone.
Can you should be able to hear me. Can you hear me?
Now it's okay. It's my fault.
Yeah. Okay. So, sorry. So there is a question from Rajiv. Does Peter use diffusers for his wonderful wide-angle wildlife pictures? If so,
Yeah.
is the lens plus diffuser setup similar to his macro photography?
It's very similar, but I try to. This is one of the topic I would like to describe in my upcoming tutorial about using flash in photography. Because if I use my flash in a usual, let's say, macro photography, I use the flash and zero corrections on flash, and usually zero correction, exposure correction on camera. But if I use the flash and wide angle, I have to balance the environmental light, which is very bright, because if you photograph wide lens, you have a sky inside your frame. So in this case, I usually use -1 compensation of exposure on my camera, and diffused flash, which I have to combine with the rest of the image. It's usually 0 to -1 exposure compensation. So yes, I have to combine both natural light and focus and flashlight together. And usually with the bright areas in the background, I combine -1 exposure on camera to keep clouds and lights in the background with the foreground flashed area.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Then there is another question, and that is from. Sorry, that's not the one. Here we go. What shutter speed did you use with ND 128? I think it was with the image of the Torrent Ducks sitting on the stone in the water in the river. If you could go back to that image, please. Yeah. And
sorry, still promoting myself. That's so beautiful one.
Right. No. How do you actually know that it was ND 128? You mentioned it, or
I remember it.
Yeah, you remember it.
yeah. So it was 1/4 of second. You have to, 1/4. Yeah, because it's a compromise between few things. I mentioned that this is the area where I photographed the ducks, and it was not cloudy at the moment I photographed, so it was very bright, as well as there are a lot of bubbles around, and the water is almost white. So one of the reason I used 128 was I have to compensate the whiteness of the scene, and the second was it was enough to get at least 2 or 3 ducks sharp. But if I use faster shutter speed, so lower ND filter, let's say 64, it would be maybe more successful in terms of sharpness, but less successful in terms of blurriness of the water. So I have to find the balance between these conditions, between bright light, sharpness, and so on. And I found this particular picture 1/4 was enough, and luckily it was 128E ND filter.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Peter.
And by the way, this
yeah.
was the situation where I was happy that I took my tripod along. I didn't expect I will use it, but after I decided to photograph it in this way, I was very happy that I have my tripod along with. And monopod will not solve the problem because 1/4 of second is too long for monopod. So that's the reason why I use the tripod instead of monopod.
At least some use of tripod we can find. Naren is just telling you get better soon. Thank you for a great presentation. Same with SmilePix. Thanks for all your insights, and I'm happy you didn't make it to the finalist in the Darwin's Award. Okay,
yeah, me too.
Then many other thanks from others, but there were still, I remember there were still a few more questions. Let me just get back to them. Thank you, Peter. Where is, I saw this? Yeah, here. Actually, it's the last one. Let me put it on. I thought Costa Rica was the place to go for birds in jungle. I guess Ecuador is better? Question mark. Thoughts? What do you think?
You know, I've been in Ecuador maybe 8 times, and the same in Costa Rica, and I plan to travel to Costa Rica this December again because I love both countries. Both are quite different. If you want to photograph highest number of birds and different shape of birds as possible, I would recommend Ecuador because it's more rich. Even though Costa Rica has almost 1,000 bird species, still Ecuador has almost 2,000 bird species. And it's more rough in terms of terrain and more valleys out there. So you will find more different shape birds. For example, in Costa Rica, there are, I don't know the exact number, but let's say 30 species of hummingbirds, or 40 maybe. But they are very, very similar to each other. There are just few which are maybe bigger or maybe different colored, but they are very, very similar shaped and colored to each other. In Ecuador, you will see incredible diversity of size, shape, colors, tails, beaks, anything. So maybe on this particular picture, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 different hummingbird species, and these are not the most different. They are maybe 4 or 5 totally different sized and shaped. So in terms of diversity, Ecuador is one of most biodiverse place on the planet. But the Costa Rica is amazing as well. I love Costa Rica from different reasons. There are still 1,000 pictures to be photographed, and it's easier to travel around because it's smaller. There are not so long travel between the lodges, and I love both countries. I would not say Costa Rica or Ecuador is better, but both are great for photography, definitely, yes.
Perfect, thanks. And last but not least, or maybe 2 more questions. One, because I remember one from previous times, people are actually asking what type of bag you are using now, what type of peak design, which fits the camera and 150 to 400. So if you can just specify the bag.
Yeah, I will try to let's do it easy way. It is Peak Design Travel backpack, 45 liters. This is the biggest. This is the biggest storage they have, and what is good that there is even space between the end of the body and the end of the internal pack. So maybe there are maybe 2 or 3 centimeters between the body with attached 150-400. Another reason why I switched from Shimoda, because Shimoda has almost same size, but it was precisely on the size of body and 150-400, and there were no space between. So I have some scratches on my eye cap, or what was the name. So here is more space in terms of length, even wide. So I placed there much more equipment. And this upper part, I use this upper part for placing something like a Peak Design slide trap or tiny tripod. I have this tiny tripod in a neoprene case, this one, and I use it all the time. I take it all the time because it can hold this big lens and photograph from ground level. So this is how I can use it from the ground level, very low level, and it works with this lens as well. So I always use this tripod and keep it here in this area between the camera and the rest of the bag.
Amazing. Thanks, Peter. And let's finish all up with one question, and that is the PDF available on your website? And I'm putting your website down right now, and yes, it is available at sulasula.com.
Yeah.
As far as I remember. Is that right? It should be. Okay, Peter, we have just turned 2 hours. We thought it's going to be 1.5 hour maximum, but I mean, you have just so many amazing images and so much to tell about your experience. So I thank you so much, really, for this great experience we could have tonight with you. And I'm personally already looking forward to your yet another experience once you return from another expedition which you go to, and hopefully we'll see some other and different images. You know, I mean, you are not the type of photographer who is shooting one and the same image all the time, which is something I like really about your pictures and even about your gallery, which we can see at your website, sulasula.com, that all the images, even at this slide, which you are showing at right now, all the images are different. It's not like one type of images. I mean, all of them are simply different kind, different type, even though the genre might be the same, wildlife, let's call it all wildlife. But I mean, they are all amazing. So thank you so much for all that you are doing and for your shots.
Yeah, thank you for your patience, all of you which conduct this lecture. I hope you enjoy it, as well as enjoy the photograph, the pictures, as well as explain how they were created. And I hope we will see in the future, because very soon I'm leaving to Pantanal again. This will be my 5th or 6th trip to Pantanal, and I'm looking forward for new opportunities and pictures. And don't get worry about any kind of equipment you have. Just go outside and photograph. And this is the reason why we use the equipment, best, worst, normal, pro, anything. So just enjoy yourself outside and enjoy photography as well.
Exactly. Thank you so much again. And as you just mentioned, somehow the best camera is the one which you have with you, right?
Exactly.
Thank you so much, guys. See you sometime in the future, and go out and take pictures. Thank you and have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.